guys, it is Carl Brown from GuitarLessons365.com. Got a great song from Skid Row today. We're gonna learn how to do In a Darkened Room off the Slave to the Grind album. It is a killer track. It's got some great guitar solos with Scotti Hill in it. So they're kind of like the signature piece of the song. So there's there's really basically 3 of them that we're gonna tackle today, along with the rest of the song, of course. Now, before we get into it, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Ring the notification bell, like and comment, and all that good stuff. Support your favorite guitar tutorial YouTuber. You know, help out this dying niche of YouTube. YouTube's not helping it out too much. So if you have a favorite guitar YouTuber, if it's me or somebody else, doesn't matter. Support their channel. Send them super thanks. Send them, subscribe to their academies. I have a link to my academy if you follow me the most in the description below. That'll give you a free 7-day trial too. Full access to all my courses, personalized support from me and everything. So hopefully you'll just start to support your favorite guitar YouTuber so we can kind of continue this whole thing. All right, so let's jump into the track. I'm in standard tuning here, and the song starts out with a really nice solo by Scotti. And the solo's over the verse chords. So we're gonna get to the verse in a second, as soon as we get through this intro solo. So I'm gonna hold off on, I usually teach the rhythm to the solo first, and then I do the solo, but since that's the next thing we're covering anyway, I'll go ahead and just do the solo. So I did that solo in the beginning of the video here. So really the first phrase of it, so basically he's kind of using a Strat style guitar. In the video, and I think back in the day, now I want to see live videos, he's using like a Les Paul, but the Strat, you can tell it's got that really throaty, really nice neck pickup tone on it. So first phrase looks like this. So that's gonna start with first a slide from 14 to 16 on the G string. And then over to the 15th fret on the B string twice. And then you're gonna pick that 16th fret on the G, slide it back down to 14, and then instead of sliding up, you're gonna bend up. So. Then you're gonna do that bend again. Then catch the 15th fret on the B string, and then bend that up a whole step. And bring it back down, sorry this. And then back to the bend on the 14th fret. And then pick it again and release it. So it kind of picks it as it's releasing. And then down to the 12th fret on the G. So we have this so far. All right, from there we have this. Into the verse. So that right there is it starts there with an oblique bend. So an oblique bend is when you're holding one note stable and you're bending the other one. So basically holding one string stable and bending the other one here. So that's just holding the 15th fret there. You can do it like this, with these 2 fingers, but it's just basically holding the 15th fret there on the B, and then bending up the 14th fret on the G string, which we've been doing for a while. Pick it, bend it up, and pick it while it's at the top of the bend, and then release. Pull off to 12, and then back to 14. So it is. See, I did that bend first on the G string, then grab that 15, and then pick them together and release. And then pull off to 12, back to 14, and then another bend and release at the 14. Then down to 12, and then you're gonna hammer on from 12 to 14 on the D string. Just some nice vibrato too whenever he's kind of holding a note. And then we're gonna have this. So that's just a series of hammer-ons, starting on the 12th fret on the G, hammer on 14. Same thing on the D. Same thing on the A. Then hammer 10 to 12 on the A. And it takes it down to the open low E string that's going to start the verse. So all together for the intro solo. From there, what I'm just going to basically do is it goes down to like a more clean sound, but it's not totally clean. So I'm just kind of rolling back the same tone I'm using for the solos, and I'm flipping it over to the bridge pickups. I'm just trying to get it there. I kind of adjust it as I go. All right, so that's the verse there. So there's a couple of verses. First of all, I should also mention too, that intro solo that we did basically happens almost identical and after this first chorus. The only difference is the very end of it's the only thing that's different. So we already did one of the solos. The second solos is almost identical except for the very last lick. But same thing with the verse. In the verse, we had this little fill that you saw in the first verse with that little fill in there. And then other than that, the second verse is the same except its fill is that. So we'll cover both of them, but they're going to be very similar. So anyway, for this first verse here, kind of rolling it off, it's going to start this open E string, open G, third fret on the B, and then back to the G. All right, and then I'm going to get to the next chord. Now what I did there is I went up the A string, 0, 2, and then I get to this C add 9 chord, which is just the third fret there on the A, second on the D. When I got up, I kind of picked both the A and the D when I got up to there. And then this is still holding that same third fret there on the B, and you just pick the open G, B, back to the open G. So kind of similar to what we did on the E chord. One more time. Then we go to a D, kind of like that. So what's going on? You're hammering 0 to 2 on the D string, then back to the open D. And then you'll hold the second fret on the G, you pick that, and then the second fret on the B string. So this. And then from there, so that is another, it's like it's an octave lower of the oblique bend that we did in the solo. It's just down here. So that's still holding that third fret there on the B, and you're holding that second fret there on the G. And you're just kind of pushing up that index finger. Then pull off to the open G. So you pick those two notes together. And pull off to the open G, and then back down to the C chord. And that kind of same picking there, G. And then we have our first fill. So that's sliding 3 up to 8 on the B string, and then you gotta pick that 8 again, then the open high E string, and then 7 on the B, then the open B string. So far for this first half of the first verse. Then we go through the same chords, but the picking is a little bit more involved. All right, so the same thing, except so this first chord, where we stopped there before the first time through the verse chords, we're gonna do the same thing, but then we're gonna add the high E, B, and G at the end. And then we're gonna do kind of the same thing on the C. So that's where we're just kind of adding a little bit to it. And then with this, there we'll just hold and just like kind of play it like we did the first time through the chords, and then the same ending. You can add that extended picking at the end of it too. You're just basically adding the picking from the high E to the B to the G at the end of it. So for the whole verse, first verse. All right, then we get to the pre-chorus. Now the pre-chorus, I feel like they're, you know, Dave and Scotty, they would mix the parts up. So I really feel like there's one of them is just doing the kind of hitting the chords, and the other one's adding the little arpeggiated notes in there. So you'll probably have one guitarist doing this. I don't know who's doing what, but just doing this. So you probably got somebody doing that, which is just the kind of a D power chord, just an open D string, second fret on the G, third on the B. To an A minor chord, and then just the open E, and the second fret on the low E string, and then into a C major chord. So it does. All right, and they're kind of ramping it up here, the distortion a little bit. And then we're back to that D power chord. And then the A minor, and that same 0. And then it goes to a full D major chord. You hit the A string and the bass if you want to. But with that, there's some arpeggiated picking. So I think there's a second chorus doing something like this. All right, so you can put those two together, and I think it's kind of closer to what they're doing on the album. So it looks like this. We basically have the open D string, and then the third fret on the B, and then the third fret on the high E. Then over the A minor, we have the open A string, first fret on the B, and then the third fret on the high E, which makes it an A minor 7. And then we have this. So that's going to be the open E string, and then the third fret on the B, open high E, back to the third fret on the B. And then the same thing, except you have the second fret on the low string. So. And then we're going to go to that C major as well. But we're just picking the low note, and then we're picking the first fret on the B, and then the third fret on the high E. So this. Then we're going to do the same thing, except we're going to mix it up on the last chord. We're going to go to a D major chord instead of that C. So other than that, pretty much the same. All right, then we get to the chorus, which I think, once again, has two separate guitar parts. You can put them together into one, though, and play it as if you just have one. If you want to play along with the recording, you don't have a second guitarist with you. So to have one guitar player is just kind of doing the full chords once again. So we basically have this. So it's just a C major to E minor, to the G and the D, and then back to the C and the E minor, and then instead of going to the G here, we're gonna straight to that D again. Now on top of that, we have this little picking pattern that could be done. Could be done up there. I haven't been able to find a thing where I'm watching who's doing what where, but it sounds kind of better down there because that open E, I think it sounds like an open E string that they're doing. So there's like a picking pattern on top of it that's doing this. Like I said, I'm going to put these together in a second so you can just play it as on one guitar. And that might be what the person with the arpeggio, I think is Dave. Might be doing the full bass note with that. And then, you know, Scotti maybe just playing the chords or vice versa. So basically, that picking pattern, let's say if you just have two guitarists and you want to both make it as easy as possible, one playing the full chords, which I just did, and the other one just doing that picking pattern. That picking pattern looks like this. So that starts at the third fret on the B and then the third fret on the high E string. So you pick that note and then do that high E string, back to the third on the B string, then to the second fret on the high E, and then back to the third fret on the high E, and then back to the B. So it's kind of, so you just rotate, you're starting on the B string, you're going back and forth between the two strings, ending on the B, but you're just rotating those notes on top from the third to the second fret. And then repeat. One more time. And then the fourth time through. So that's going to be 3 on the B to 3 on the high E, and then back to the B, then second on the high E string, then back to the B, and then the open high E, and then back to the third on B. So all together. All right, and then you start over again. Just get 2 times through the picking pattern though, and then go to that D major, kind of meet the guy doing the full chorus just on that D. All right, now how to put that together. So basically you just hold the root note. So we have a C to an E to a G to a D, right? So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna play this first picking pattern. By first hitting the root note underneath it. So it's a C right there at the third fret there on the A string, and then hold that. And then that picking pattern. So you put them together. And like I said, he might be actually playing it like this, with somebody else just doing the full chords. But then you basically do the same thing, except the bass note there is going to be the open E string, and then the same pattern up top. And then what we're going to do is we're going to change to the third fret in the bass. The third fret on the low E string is the bass note. So that's that G. So that makes me have to finger these notes up top a little bit differently. So we have this. You can play them the same no matter what, if you want. One more time. Now when we get to the D, we're going to do that open D string in the bass, and then that same, that different little picking little with a little melody on top of it. So all together. then repeat. Straight to that D. All right, so that's it for the chorus there. Then we get to solo number 2. So this solo, once again, is over the verse. So we've already covered the verse. This second solo is very similar to the first. It's going to be exact same thing except for the very last lick. So it looks like this. All right, so we can just get to, so before the last lick in the first solo was that thing. So where that was at in the first solo, we're gonna instead do that. So what that is sliding up to the 14th fret on the A string, then roll from the D string, 12th fret, to the 12th fret on the G, and then you're gonna do a double stop. You're gonna play that 12th fret on the G, while playing the 15th fret there on the B. Then go down to 13 on the B string and 12, then back to that 15, and then you're gonna end it with the 14th fret on the high E string. All right, so then we get to the second verse of the song. It's the same as the first, except where that fill that happens in the middle of it, the first that was like this, is instead going to be this. So that's going to be a slide to the 5th fret there on the D string, over to the 3rd fret there on the B, and then back to that 5th fret on the D string, and then play 4. The open D. Other than that, verse is the exact same. So just the 2 fills were different. There's nothing else in there. And then we get to the second chorus. Now the second chorus does sound slightly different because it sounds like the picking pattern is a little bit different. It looks like he's doing this. So he's the last note in that picking pattern is the open B string. And I believe the 4th one's the same. So you can do that as well. That's easier said than done, you know, when it's just played by itself. I mean, it's easier said than done when you're having to throw that open B in there. It's kind of tedious. So it's kind of hard to get it exactly right. Like that. So, especially if you don't practice it like me. So you can choose to do that if you want, but it does sound slightly different because they're ending that picking pattern just with the open B and not the 3rd fret there on the B string. So choose. You can play it like the first solo. I don't think anybody would notice, but that open B is there in the second chorus. All right. So but really nothing else. There's kind of a pause there while Sebastian's doing his thing there at the end when he gets to that D, and then we have the solo. So Scotti's main solo is really long and it fades out the track, fades out on it. So what I'm gonna do is gonna show you the solo up until the chord progression where it starts to fade. So basically it's repeating the chorus chord progression. So when it gets to that next section where it's gonna start fading out and I'm gonna stop there. So basically I'm teaching a little bit over the first 30 seconds of the solo. And then the rest of it you can just do is like, it's mostly E minor pentatonic or E natural minor bass, really around here. Kind of that thing. So it's really E natural minor mostly is what he's doing with a couple pentatonic licks in there. So you can continue to solo like that, but I'll show you the solo note for note, and then you can just kind of do your own thing, which I think he kind of does live anyway. He starts the solo out like the recording and then just kind of goes off. All right, but what's that solo over? Well, the solo is over the chorus, a simplified version of the chorus chords. So basically none of that little pig. A little. picking thing on it. Just straight strumming underneath it, kind of simplified, like this. So we've done that before. That was the chord progression underneath that little picking pattern, which is that C, E minor, G, and D. And then the same thing again, C, E minor, and then straight to the D, and just twice as long as that chord. So basically just a simplified version of the chorus is what's going on underneath this. So all we have left is Scotti's main solo, which is absolutely killer. So let me play through it for you. About the first 30, 32 seconds of it. And then I'll leave you on your own for the rest of that after that. But here we go. All right, so we're gonna go that far, and then when it starts going through the chord progression again, it starts fading out within like 4 or 5 seconds of that. And you know, we don't do fade out solos. So anyway, let's start here with this bend at the top. All right, so that's just gonna be a whole stat bend at the 17th fret on the high E string. And then pick it, release, pull off to 15, and then pick 17 again, and then bend back up. And then he picks it when he gets up top again. And then this is one of my favorite things to do when you have a bend. He frets the string on top, on front of the bend. So we have this. So that's, as he's bent up that second time on the 17th fret there on the high E, he just plays 18 in front of, with his pinky, and then releases back down to 17. Release that 17, and then pull off to 15, and then back to 17. So we have this. All right, next phrase. All right, so that's gonna kind of slides into this bend at this 15th fret there on the B string. So it comes out. So into that bend at the 15, and then you'll grab that note on the 15th fret on the high E string. So it kind of a oblique bend. Then you'll pick that 15th fret on the B string. Release, down to 12, back to 15, and then it's kind of like a pre-bend 15th fret. So it is. And then over to the 14th fret there on the G strings, a whole set bend and release. Pull off to 12, then back to 14 on the G. And then hold that 15th fret there on the B string. So far. From there we hit this. So there's a couple of bends. It's kind of a bend and release at the 14th fret on the G. Pull off to 12, over to 14 on the D string, and then to that 12 on the G. And then we have this first fast stroke. All right, right, so Scotti does a lot of this type of stuff in his solos. So it's gonna first start. It slides into the 14th fret there on the. This is just based around mostly until it gets to this top note, the ninth in the key. So it's all pentatonic until you get there. So then it kind of becomes really kind of E minor, E natural minor there. So here he's just sliding into the 14th fret there on the A string. Then you get pick 12 on the D, hammer on 14, pick 12 on the G, hammer on 14, pick 12 on the B string, hammer on 15, then pick 12 on the high E, and then hammer on 14. And then pick that again, and just bend it up a whole half step. So it is. And then we have this. So that's going to be picking 12 over to 15 on the beat. 12 on the high E, 15 on the beat, and it was kind of a descending version of what we did. Yeah, if you play that kind of staccato 12 on the high E and 12 on the 15 on the B, then you pick that 15 again, pull off to 12, pick 14 on the G, pull off to 12, pick 14 on the D, pull off to 12, and then pick 14 on the A string, pull off to 12, and then slide down to 10. So it just kind of slower. And then we have this. All right, so the way this, so coming out of this. So that's a couple of bends at the 14th fret there on the G string. And then the way that, and that's 12 on the G string, over to 14 on the D, roll over to 14 on the G, back to 14 on the D, and then slight bend on that 12, back on the G, then back down to that 14 on the D string. So we have out of. And then we have this, which is going to be 12 on the G, 14 on the D, and then, which is a bend there at the 14th fret on the G string. And then pull off 14 to 12 on the G. Over to 14 on the D string. And then we have this. And that's going to be 12 on the G, over that 14 on the D again, back to that 12 a couple of times, then down to 11 a couple of times, and then start bending up that 12th fret on the G. You can just do it with your index finger if you want, so it is. And then the last phrase we're going to cover. So that's going to be a bend at the 14th on the G, down to 12 on the G, then play 14, 12 on the D, then back to 12 on the G, over to 14 on the D, then a quick little slide from the 14 down to the 12 on the A, down to 10, and then the low E 12th fret. So this. And then from there, it's just more kind of E natural minor. Kind of just mess around with the E minor pentatonic right there, and that kind of. Kind of fun just to mess around with it right there. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. It's like I said, it's a great song, but it's got some really great solo work in it too, and some really memorable melodies there. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you again soon for GuitarLessons365.com.